If your campground is 95% monthly campers paying $600 a site, you're potentially leaving $100,000 or more on the table every season. And here's the thing you probably know. You can feel it when you turn away weekend reservations in July because your sites are locked up with month-to-month tenants, paying a fraction of what those transient guests would have paid. So let's talk about the real math behind monthly versus nightly revenue, backed by actual industry benchmarking data. Because the answer isn't to eliminate monthly campers. It's to stop letting them dominate your revenue mix when the numbers say you shouldn't. Let me start with the industry baseline so you can see where your park stands. According to OHI, Outdoor Hospitality Industry, or ARVIC formerly, the benchmarking report showed the median RV park in the United States brought in $3.52 million in total revenue. Of that, $1.43 million came from nightly rentals, and $1.02 million came from monthly and seasonal rentals. Now, I know that's probably higher than most campgrounds in the family-owned world, but the statistic numbers still remain the same. So right off the bat, you can see that successful parks are not choosing one or the other. They're running a balanced mix, and there's a reason for that, which we'll get to. But here's where the math gets uncomfortable for a lot of owners. Let's talk about what a site is actually worth, depending on how you rent it. Nightly stays in a quality RV park expect to run $60 to $90 a night. So let's say you're in the middle, about $75 a night. Over 30 days, that site could generate $2,250 in revenue if you kept it rented nightly the entire month. Now, your monthly rate is probably somewhere between $500 and $800, so let's call it $600. That means a site earning $600 a month from a long-term tenant is generating less than a third of what it would earn as a nightly rental. Did you hear that, folks? A third. And I know you're thinking, yeah, but I've never have 100% nightly occupancy for 30 straight days. That's just not realistic. You are absolutely right, it's not. But let's say you're at 70% occupancy on nightly sales during a peak season, which is easily achievable for a well-marketed park in a decent location. 75% of $2,250 is still $1,575 a month. That's more than double your monthly rate. And that's the revenue gap we're talking about. That's what you're leaving on the table when you fill your park with monthly campers and don't reserve enough capacity for transient guests, especially during your busiest months. Now, here's where I need to be clear. Monthly campers are not the enemy here. Don't get me wrong. They reduce your turnover costs. They're not cleaning sites every day. You're not processing check-ins and check-outs constantly. You're not dealing with the wear and tear that comes with high-frequency guest rotation. Monthly campers also provide a guaranteed baseline income. They're paying you whether it rains, the gas prices spike, or whether the economy dips. That cash flow stability does matter, especially in the off-season when nightly demand drops. This is why the typical portfolio strategy in the RV park industry is roughly 70% long-term or seasonal campers and 30% transient sites. That mix gives you the stability of recurring revenue and the upside of higher margin nightly bookings during peak demand. Well-managed parks follow the model, report their earnings margins between 13 and 17%. That's the benchmark. But here's the problem. The campground that's 95% monthly campers at $500 or $600 a site, you're not hitting those margins. You're underperforming the industry because you're essentially subsidizing your long-term tenants with revenue that you should be earning from the weekend voyeurs, road trippers, and families on vacation. You're turning away $90 a night bookings so someone can stay on that site for $20 a night on a monthly basis. And I get how this happens. Monthly campers feel easy. Most of the time, they're low maintenance. They don't complain much. They're just there. And in the off season, they're filling sites that might otherwise sit empty. But in peak season, that's a different story. Let me show you what rebalancing just 10% of your sites could do for your bottom line. Let's say you've got a 50-site park right now, and you're 90% monthly. That's 45 monthly sites and 5 nightly sites. What if you shifted 5 of those monthly sites to nightly during your peak season? Let's call that May through August, or 120 days. Your monthly campers were paying you $600 per site per month. Over 4 months, that's $2,400 per site, or $12,000 total for those 5 sites. Now you're renting those same 5 sites nightly at $75 a night. Let's be conservative and say you average 70% occupancy over those 120 days. That's 84 nights booked per site at $75 per night. That's $6,300 per site. Times 5 sites is $31,500. So you just went from $12,000 to $31,500 in 4 months. That's nearly $20,000 more revenue from just 5 sites. And if your park is bigger, say 100 sites, and you make the same shift with 10 sites, you're looking at nearly $40,000 in additional revenue during peak season. For a mid-sized park, this rebalancing strategy could mean $50,000 to $100,000 or more in additional revenue every single year. That's not a projection. That's just pure math based on industry standard rates and a conservative occupancy assumption. So why aren't more campgrounds doing this? Because it's uncomfortable. You've got monthly campers who've been with you for years. They're comfortable. They're part of the community. And the idea of telling them they need to move or switch sites feels like you're betraying them. But here's the reality. You are running a business, not a subsidized housing program. And if you're not optimizing your revenue mix, you're not going to have the business run in 5 years when expenses keep climbing and your margins keep shrinking. So how do you actually do this without it blowing up your relationships with your monthly client base? First, phase out month-to-month agreements and move to seasonal contracts with clear end dates. If someone wants to stay long-term, they commit to a full season, October through April, for example, and they understand that peak season sites are reserved for nightly guests. Second, reserve your best, most accessible sites for nightly during peak months. Offer your monthly campers secondary locations that are still good, but not prime waterfront or pull-through sites that transient guests are willing to pay a premium for. Third, use dynamic pricing tools to automate this decision-making. Modern platforms can help you forecast demand and set the rates that maximize your revenue without you having to manually adjust pricing every week. And fourth, communicate the change early. Don't spring this on people in April when you're trying to clear the sites for the summer. Let your monthly campers know in January what the plan is. Frame it as optimizing the park for everyone's experience. Because a park that's financially healthy is a park that can reinvest in improvements. If you're sitting at 90% or more monthly campers right now, I want you to run the numbers on what rebalancing even 10% of your sites could mean for your bottom line. Because the difference between a campground that's barely breaking even and one that's hitting 15% margins often comes down to this exact decision. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you want more campground finance breakdowns with real data, and I'll see you in the next one.